we're taking a look at a Dixie-Narco 5800 Bevmax. Let's try to take a look. We already know what's going on with it. It has a bad refrigeration deck, so we'll need to get to the back here. Brought a refrigeration deck and a pallet jack. I recommend the pallet jack. It makes it a lot easier to move these big guys. They get really heavy, especially with product in them. So go ahead and free our pallet jack here. Alright. Go ahead and slide it in there. Luckily, these machines are usually just tall enough you can get a pallet jack under. Makes it a lot easier to move them around. So you'll lift it up and pull it out just enough where I can get behind it and have a big enough space to carry the deck through there. So go to unplug it. And that should be about big enough. So we'll go ahead and set her down. And we'll be done with the pallet jack for now. We'll come back to it later. So, first thing we'll go ahead and do, prop this door open so it doesn't close on us while we're working. I like to move the cup a little bit out of the way. I pull it up. That way you can easily get underneath the shelf with no issue. So we'll need to take out these two Phillips screws down here. This part can be a little challenging. You gotta pull that bottom piece out. And then if you pop it up, especially if it's an older machine, it could get stuck. And then this shroud just pops up. Be careful of the belts. Pull straight out. Now down here, we got our handle to pull up, and we got our cord to disconnect. And in there you can see there's a bolt that pushes the deck over to seal it. So we'll go ahead and get our socket ready. If you have a right angle adapter, it works super well in this situation, or if you have a power ratchet, that also helps. We'll go ahead and light it up in there. Probably 7/16. I think that'll be our ticket. So we go ahead and get our equipment all set up here. I'll be using an extension with a right angle. A little bit tedious, but easiest to reach with. So we'll go ahead and get it on there and get it to pop loose and unscrew it almost all the way out. The more room you have, the better. Go and disconnect, and then we'll add our 1/4-inch nut driver bit onto it because we'll need that for the back. The last thing you got to do up here, pop this cover off and remove the temperature probe and the defrost sensor. This deck is low on charge, hence the freezing halfway down the evaporator. So we'll take our drill, come around here. There's usually 6, sometimes 5, depending on if you've lost one or not, screws holding this back piece in. So get these taken out. That gives us full access to everything else we need to remove this deck. So there is 2 spade connectors here for the evaporator fan. So we'll need to remove those. And it looks like this one was zip tied to the main power, so we'll go ahead and cut that. We also have our main power plug that goes to the compressor itself. So now we'll go ahead and cut the zip tie loose. Easier if you have a pair of cutters. But somebody got a little fun with the cable management. So there we go, disconnect that. So spade should stay in the machine. That plug is for the compressor. And now our deck is completely free. If it was a brand new machine, there would be one Phillips screw in the bottom of the deck. You'd have to use a right angle adapter to get it. It's kind of a pain. Alright. Now our deck is completely free. Just gotta work it loose. They tend to get kind of stuck in there over time. And the entire sled comes out. These are strong enough, these shrouds are strong enough that you can just kind of carry it by the exhaust for the exhaust for the evaporator. So we'll go ahead and set this aside. Grab our new one. And before you comment, yes, I know the guard is still in there. However, it didn't impact performance, and it was a momentary lapse. Some unintentional blindness. So now, just go ahead and push this up. Slide it in. So this part you might have to work a little bit. Kind of center it and give it a good old shove in there. So get it close, and you can get your electrical connections hooked up. So grab your main plug, put that back in. It's keyed, so it only goes in one way. And then grab your spades and your evaporator fan spades. It does not matter what you hook it to as long as they're both connected. There's no specific orientation for those. Alright, that's done. So all our power is finished. So go ahead and come up to the front. And I like to leave stuff like that so that I don't have to lug it around. So now we'll have to make sure that the cords aren't being smashed inside the shroud, which usually they aren't, but never can be too careful. Use the handle to kind of pull it forward all the way, make sure everything is out of the way. Then we can hook up our socket again. Once we get that screwed in, it'll push the entire deck over. We can go ahead and, since we're down here, we can go ahead and put in our temperature probe. And it can be a little bit of fuss, but it's alright to push. And then our defrost probe. Make sure it sticks in there as far as it possibly can. Double check it's pushed all the way, that all the wires are out of the way. Now we can go around to the back and triple check to make sure it's pushed in pretty much all the way. It might need a little bit of help. These decks are notorious for being super duper tight, so you might have to show it some old school love, trying to get it to pop in there. Once that gasket's sealed, then you can take your grate and put it back on. Kind of only goes on one way, but make sure that those louvers are pointing up, which is a little counterintuitive for some people. But trust me, that's the way it goes. And sometimes they can get a little bit fussy on how tight they are, so make sure you don't super tighten them all the way until you've got pretty much all of them in and lined up. Now the top 3 are lined up, the bottom 2 should go in just fine. Alright, now that that's in, the last thing I'll do to be done in the back is go ahead and plug this guy in. So now I've got power to the machine. And now the last part of our install, be putting the front shroud back on. So triple check, make sure everything is in place. Never a bad idea to make absolutely sure. Can take our little grate, pop it on in. Can be a little difficult sometimes, but I like to make sure that none of the power cords are pinched right before I put the shroud back on. So there's a label, it says top front. We'll go ahead and adjust my light. Slides up and into slots on both sides. It can be kind of a pain. This is one of the most irritating parts of the older 5800s. Just kind of make sure it sets in. Then this guy just kind of slides in underneath. And your last step, which can be a little bit tricky, is finding the screw holes and putting the screws back in. So your light will definitely come in handy for this one. So if you don't get it right the first try, then take your light and get it down in there and find your screw hole. It won't damage the machine if you put another one in. It's not going to hurt anything. I just like to use the ones that were originally there, because that kind of tells you that it is far enough in that you should have a seal around the whole thing. Once you get that first one set, it should be pretty simple to get the second one in. There we go. There's that. So now the next thing we'll do is we'll put it in test mode, and we'll go to factory diagnostics, pull out one of the door switches, and home the cup, because we did move it while the machine was off. Otherwise, its positioning will be completely wrong. Then we'll go ahead and hit the control button again and get ourselves to service mode. And relay toggle is the one we're looking for. We'll hit the relays for the fan and the compressor, make sure they both kick on, which in this case they do. Let it run for about 15 seconds or so, make sure it's not going to kick out. Then once we've confirmed that the relays still work and everything kicks on, then we will go ahead and close her up.